Hello, and what's going on, everybody? It is a beautiful Friday, and I'm your host, Hunter King, Blind Eye himself, owner and proprietor of Blind Eye Media. And my apartment is still standing despite the fact that the wind and rain last night led me to believe for a minute that a hurricane had hit. Sort of joking. It's bad when you're you've got a headset on, you've got your Xbox headset on. It blocks out so much noise. And you've got, multiple friends, yelling, screaming, laughing in your ears, and you can still hear the wind and rain slamming your apartment. But it was fun. It was fun. Okay, that wasn't important. But been nicer today. So, that was wild last night. That cold front hit like a ton of bricks here in Beaumont, Texas. With that out of the way, as you can see by the title, slow news day. There were no NBA games last night, so nothing like that to recap. There are news stories today, don't get me wrong, but I'm flying by the seat of my pants a little more than usual here. So, I would like to start the show today, though, with a I was right dance. I say I was right. Maybe it's confirmation bias. But I've talked for a while, and not that this is, an idea original to me, don't get me wrong. But I've believed this for a long time. But just earlier this week, I was talking about investment in your college football program being the key to your success. Not changing the rules to try and stop a juggernaut that is only a juggernaut because they outwork you so greatly. With what you're seeing at Alabama and Georgia. And Nick Saban and Kirby Smart have gone whining to Congress about NIL. Look, they're a little old school, and I get some of where they're coming from. However, they're wrong. For once, Nick Saban and Kirby Smart are wrong. And Congress does not need to get involved in jack squat with college athletics more than they already have with terrible stuff like, well, in my opinion, poorly implemented legislation like Title IX. The idea behind Title IX, not bad. The implementation, execution, and what Title IX has actually turned into on college campuses is nothing short of an abomination and nothing what it was intended to be. Nor is it necessarily... No, and it's not doing what it was intended to do. So anyway, not getting on that subject today. Last night, late kick with Josh Pate, which he's been trumpeting this horn for a while, but he did a segment on how all the turmoil in college football is centered really around one entity, one man, Nick Saban. He's not necessarily causing it directly. But look at all the change that has happened in college football in the last decade. And every ounce of it has been centered around dethroning Nick Saban. And it is yet to do so. Why? Because it doesn't matter what you change if you do not change yourself. Because all these rules changes, or all these different shifts in the sport, Nick Saban's just adopted them all, and he's doing it better than you, just like he's been doing everything else better than you. If you're not going to beat him, you're not going to beat him. Guess what? The crazy thing is all these changes have happened. There have been people beating him. During Nick Saban's time at Alabama, he has not won every SEC title or national title, despite the fact that a lot of the arguments for changes in the sport center around the fact that they are always winning. It's always Alabama. They win every year. I've heard people say that, and they're ignorant fools. Because he hasn't even won half the national title since he's been there. He has won more than everyone else, and he has had the most prolific run of success of any coach in the history of the sport, as far as I'm concerned. Based on the expansion of college football and just how much more talent there is and how much more investment there is compared to the early days, I think it is extremely impressive what he's done. I think most people would consider Nick Saban at this point the greatest college football coach of all time. His 2 decades coaching in the college ranks, well, specifically his runs with LSU and Alabama, but even throwing in some Michigan State before LSU. That being said, to get back to the point, it doesn't matter what you change if Nick Saban's still around, because he will embrace it and he will beat you at it unless you beat him at it. Guess what? Kirby Smart just beat Saban. Yeah, they split the games, but Kirby won the game that he really wanted to win. It can be done. Dabo Swinney has beaten Alabama twice in national title game, by the way. When they meet up in the national title game, Clemson's got a 2-1 over Saban's Bama. Interesting little stat there for you. By the way, LSU has won championships. Well, actually, I think Les Miles won his national championship the year before Saban was at Alabama, or it was during Saban's first year. So at least Ed Orgeron did. But Les Miles has beaten Alabama during the season. Gus Malzahn, by the way, 3 wins over Alabama while he was at Auburn. And that wasn't good enough, apparently. But Auburn fans are really wishing they had Gus Malzahn back right now. Maybe I'm wrong, but if I am, you don't know what you got till it's gone. But you can change all you want. Saban's just going to beat you at it because you refuse to put in the work. I'll say this. You refuse to put in as much time, as much work, and as much resources as Saban and his program and his backers will. Now, it seems like that's changing. I tell you what. I'll tell you who is spending right now. I'll tell you who is putting in the time, who is putting in the effort. Tennessee is. LSU is. Because I'm just going to tell you this right now. The Brian Kelly coaching hire at LSU is the biggest investment LSU has made at the head coaching position in an outright hire. Les Miles wasn't this big of a name when he took over. Nick Saban was an up-and-comer when he took over at LSU. Not an established national title game threat head coach already when he took over at LSU. Brian Kelly coming to LSU is more like Nick Saban coming into LSU. No, Kelly does not have a national title win, but he's played for one as a head coach. He's been successful, one of the most successful coaches at both of his last 3 stops. If we're going to go back all the way to Central Michigan. But he built Cincinnati into the team and the program with upside that Luke Fickell has eventually came in charge of and has elevated. Butch Jones doesn't get the Tennessee job if he's not able to follow on Brian Kelly's coattails for the second straight stop, because he replaced Kelly at Central Michigan and kept it going. He replaced Kelly at Cincinnati, not quite as good, but he kept them at the top of their conference. Brian Kelly's elite. This is big investment from LSU. Because they got Ed Orgeron. Ed Orgeron came to that staff after being being on the staff at USC and being an interim coach there. He ends up being an interim guy at LSU, and because he's from Louisiana and he's really good at, well, because he talks like he's from there, because he is from there, and he was able to connect with the fan base in that way, it fit. And it worked until it didn't. Brian Kelly's a legit hire down there. Florida's invested. I think going out and getting Billy Napier shows how invested they are. I think firing Dan Mullen showed where they realized we've got to step up. People can say Billy Napier was a little bit of a cut rate higher compared to other people on the market, but I disagree with that statement. Billy Napier looks like he is the next Brian Kelly. I don't want to go as far as saying Nick Saban, but he's that up-and-coming guy who you should want to hitch your wagon to. South Carolina's investing. I'm not saying they're going to be a national title contender, but by their standards, this is the most they've been invested in a decade. And that was the most they'd ever been invested. Kentucky's invested. Once again, probably not national title contender level, but we'll see. It depends, because Mark Stoops is starting to get some people, or starting to get players in there, like higher profile players than he's ever gotten in there. And they look like a transfer destination right now. Especially after the successes of Wan'Dale Robinson and Will Levis. Trust me, guys notice, or the guys notice. College players are noticing. Recruits are noticing too. Obviously, Georgia's invested, but Arkansas is investing like crazy. A&M might be invested as much as any program in college football, including Alabama and Georgia. Texas is trying to get there. And the boosters, and this doesn't just mean money. When I say investment, I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about everyone in the program investing in a vision and coming together to meet that vision. Not a bunch of people with separate visions trying to work together and investing, but battling each other behind the scenes or trying to win the coach over to their way of thinking. No. There's a vision from the athletic director and the coach, and the boosters are buying in, the players are buying in, the staff coming in is buying. Like, there's uniformity, and the student body and the fans are buying in. That's what's happening at A&M. University of Texas is trying to do that. I actually believe Oklahoma right now under Brent Venables is probably going to have an even more united vision for the program than was under Lincoln Riley. Because, Venables has deep ties there, and there's a defensive history at Oklahoma that has been forgotten in the last, or seems to have been kind of forgotten as year over year over the last decade. Venables is going to bring that back, and trust me, the offense is going to be just fine. I think USC has proven they're done thinking we can skimp on the coach, and as long as we get a pretty good coach, we've got everything else. There's so much talent here, that'll uplift him. No. That's not how it works. Clay Helton was a cheapo hire. I almost feel like, and I don't mean to be insulting to Clay Helton, but to me, calling him a great value brand hire almost feels like a disservice and a slight at great value. I'm just going to be honest. Like, under Clay Helton, I would argue they had assistants who probably would have done a better job in the pilot's chair. And I'm talking about T. Martin in that regard, his offensive coordinator, for starters. because they let him go, and the bottom really fell out, in my opinion. At least on the developing talent side, the last couple years. Because yeah, Drake London, but look at the turmoil at the quarterback position. Keaton Slovis, I think, regressed. I wasn't in love with where their program was. Look at Miami. Miami's investing in. I talked about that. Miami's heavily investing in. I'm gonna be talking about this because this is the off season is a dirty word. There's never an off season in college football. I'm sorry, Josh Pate. I uttered that dirty word. Yes, I watch Late Kick religiously. I don't miss a show. Because I really enjoy his show. Because to be honest, I feel like he's the voice of most college football fans. But, I mean, there's no season because the coaches are having to work hard all the time. Scouting, recruiting. They've got so much stuff going on this time of year people wouldn't believe. Because people don't care to look into it. There is investment kicking up all over the country. The Big Ten, Michigan State and Penn State decided, all right, we got to go all in. At Michigan State showing it. Penn State, they did give James Franklin the big contract extension. Let's see what else happens. I'll say this. That big 5-star freshman quarterback they brought in makes me think that the investment started this past year. But if Penn State's investing like I think they are based on that contract extension, you're not going to see a 7-6 season from Penn State anytime soon. Of course, Ohio State's invested. Michigan's invested. Let's see if these. I will say though, I'd argue their administration might have messed up by basically giving Josh Gaddis, their offensive coordinator, the cold shoulder when Jim Harbaugh had a foot out the door to go back to the NFL as a candidate for the Vikings job, and he was interested in the Raiders job. That interest was not mutual, or at least everything I've seen, it really wasn't that mutual. Michigan screwed up because Gaddis is a good young offensive coordinator. Their offense made big strides last year, and I think was in position to make bigger strides this year. He's now in Miami, and he's got a better quarterback, in my opinion, than either of the two quarterbacks in Michigan's room. Now, I'm trying to remember the second stringer's name. I think it's McCarthy. I think it's like J.J. McCarthy or something like that. I think he's got a lot of talent. And probably has as much talent as the guy down at Miami, Van Dyke. Actually, I think he's a little more athletic. But Van Dyke looked like he was really figuring things out down the stretch. Had a great close to the season. And they've got a big future. I think Gaddis was a great get down there at Miami. Michigan's having to replace 2 coordinators. We'll see what happens there. I'm really hoping to see the investment level upped in the Big Ten West with some of those schools. And a lot of those schools, they do a great job of developing. Like, there's a lot of programs that do a great job of developing players. But they have the ability to be more. Because if your player development's that good, why are you not investing further to get even better players in the system? And I'm talking about Iowa. I'm talking about Wisconsin. In particular, those 2 schools, if they were doing what Michigan State's, if they were going all out like Michigan State is doing right now, those 2 schools can be powerhouses because they have great, and I mean great coaches, great staffs, and they have a great sense for how to develop talent. They have plans in place that are putting guys in the NFL. they can be national contenders, and they're not right now. And I'm sorry, yeah, Iowa played the Big Ten championship game. They weren't going to win that game. It didn't matter if it was Michigan or Ohio State. They were losing that game. They would have lost the Penn State game earlier in the season if Sean Clifford had not been injured in that game. And Penn State's coaching staff, and possibly still would have, if Penn State's coaching staff had done a better job of adjusting their offense to their backup quarterback strengths. Wisconsin's got one of my favorite coordinators in the country in Jim Leonhard, one of the smartest football players I've ever seen. He is a really intelligent coordinator, and I see him as a high-end future head coach. I think Jim Leonhard's ability as a head, or I think his potential as a coach is as high as anybody in the country. And I'm really excited to see where his coaching career takes him in the next 5-10 years. But if they invest like Michigan State, Wisconsin can be the best team in the Big Ten. Because they've been that in the past. But it also took Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State and Michigan State all being kind of on hard times at the time. Well, and Michigan State was up and down during that period. Well, actually, that was kind of during the Mark D'Antonio boom. Like his best years. But, you know, the early part of the 2010s, Wisconsin was at the top of the conference. You know, between... who was the coach there between... Was there a coach there between Tressel and Meyer? I don't think there was. But towards the end of Tressel's tenure and the beginning of Meyer's tenure, like, Wisconsin was right there at the top. And then Ohio State's just put a stranglehold on things since then. You got to invest like the big boys if you're going to win. You've got to work like the big boys if you're going to win. Stop whining. Stop trying to change rules. And for Saban and Smart, once again, just do what you've been doing. Stop whining. Don't whine about NIL. Just beat everyone at it. Unless you're scared that you're not going to be able to. Which seems kind of odd considering you're at Georgia and Alabama. That's all I'm saying. So to move on from that topic and me kind of doing a little dance about how I've been talking about something, or I've been talking about that same thing this week, and the same opinion being shared on Late Kick by one of, in my opinion, the most genuine, authentic, and intelligent minds in college football. Not like academically intelligent. No, like just he knows the sport. Intelligence. Let's see here. Let's get into. Let's check some headlines real quick. I did see a few things that kind of popped out at me. So let me adjust the camera. I have to adjust it more for, especially when I'm reading off at ESPN and some other sites because of how they have everything laid out. All right. So I can get close enough. So this is big. So I'm a fan of UFC. I like mixed martial arts. Well, watching it. I can't practice it for crap, but I love watching the fights. UFC lightweight champ Oliveira has been stripped of his UFC title after missing weight for his big championship fight tomorrow night against Justin Gaethje. Really sucks, but, you know, it's your job to do that. So now everybody's like, man, Gaethje can't win the belt. There's a lot of us rooting for Gaethje. Justin Gaethje is one of the, or Gaethje, I think it's Gaethje, is one of the most electric fighters in UFC history. Like, super entertaining. I love watching him fight. I loved him so much I was watching him before he even got to UFC. But he can still win the belt tonight. Oliveira cannot. So hopefully, what I'm hoping for is I'm hoping Gaethje wins the match, and I'm hoping we get a rematch of this fight later this year. Or, yeah, towards the end of the year. That would be the best case scenario. But I want the belt on Gaethje, and if this is how it happens, it's how it happens. We just saw with Aljamain Sterling. You know, last year, he got the belt from Peter Yan because Peter Yan, while dominating the fight, decided, I'm going to throw a just vicious, illegal knee for no reason at all, and it handed Sterling the win and the title by disqualification. Well, Sterling just came back and he beat Yan in a hard-fought rematch, and he held his title, and people booed and booed, and they can boo. But they should be booing Yan, not Sterling. None of this stuff was Sterling's fault. It was all Yan's fault. Like, ESPN wrote an article talking about how, you know, Aljamain Sterling's kind of like the heel and he's embracing it, and I'm glad he's embracing it. But he's not the heel. Yan is. Jan's the one who screwed up. Jan's the idiot who handed away his title and then couldn't get it back. So, I hope if Gaethje wins this, that people don't treat it the same way. Some other big news today. The Raiders, they didn't really talk much about it, but Dan Ventrell, their president, the team president, is out of that position. Raiders owner Mark Davis announced that today. Dan Ventrell is no longer with the Raiders organization. Davis said in a statement, "We will have no further comments at this time," which that is really short and succinct. Neither Davis nor Ventrell responded to messages from ESPN. Ventrell's departure continues a series of palace intrigue. That's a creative way to put it. Within the Raiders organization, as it has undergone massive upheaval since moving to Southern Nevada from Oakland in 2020. He was named team president following the 2021 season after taking on the title on an interim basis when previous team president Mark Badane resigned last July, which I remember talking about that on my stream. Ventrell previously had been their executive vice president and general counsel. He had been with and he was part of the organization for 18 years. Badane cited family, the completion of Allegiant Stadium, and the desire for new pursuits after being with the team since 1991 as a reason for his resignation. And that was a big thing. I mean, the guy had been there he had been an institution at the franchise for 3 decades at that point. The Raiders also saw the business side departure last summer of Chief Financial Officer Ed Villanueva after 18 years, Senior Vice President of Strategy and Business Development Brandon Dole after 8 years, and Controller Araxi Grant after 20 months. On the football side, Coach John Gruden, who had signed a 10-year contract in 2018, resigned on October 11th in the wake of a overblown email scandal. And General Manager Mike Mayock, who was hired in 2019, was let loose in January. Mike Mayock basically caught friendly fire because of John Gruden. Davis then raided the New England Patriots to hire coach Josh McDaniels and general manager Dave Ziegler. Jeremy Aguero resigned on Thursday as the Raiders' chief operations and analytics officer after just 7 months, he told the Las Vegas Review-Journal. So this came, that was yesterday before this even happened. Which 7 months, that would have been, that would have been the middle of the season. So, a lot of stuff going on for the Raiders. Let me pop over here, check the chat real quick. All right, cool. Let's keep going. Embiid clears protocol. He is now doubtful for Game 3. I don't think he plays tonight. And if the Sixers lose tonight, that series is over. Penguins to Smith out for playoffs after surgery. Let's see here. Man, Sergio Garcia apparently got really upset at some kind of official ruling, I think it was yesterday. Let me check this. Sergio Garcia, frustrated by ruling at Wells Fargo Championship, says, "I can't wait to leave this tour." Sergio Garcia's frustrations over a ruling on a lost ball in the first round of the Wells Fargo Championship on Thursday night have caused him to reveal where he's soon headed. After driving his tee shot on the 10th hole into a hazard at TPC Potomac in Potomac, Maryland, Garcia became frustrated with a PGA Tour rule official who assessed him a penalty for taking too much time while trying to find his ball. Dude. Players are allotted 3 minutes to find lost balls once they arrive at the vicinity of where it landed. Garcia argued that he hadn't started searching until he crossed a river. "You want me to swim through the river?" Garcia asked the rules official. "I wasn't looking for the ball there. I was looking for the ball once I got on to this side. Does that make sense?" After losing the argument. No, he didn't lose the argument necessarily. After being told he had lost the argument, Garcia waved his hand in disgust and said, "I can't wait to leave this tour. I can't wait to get out of here, my friend." After walking through the waist-high grass a little longer, Garcia said, "A couple of more weeks, I don't have to deal with you anymore." Later Thursday, the PGA Tour clarified in a statement that after a video review, it was determined that the search time clock should have been paused as Garcia spent a considerable amount of time trying to access the other side of the creek, but that was not in clear view of the referee. So, he didn't lose the argument, is what PGA Tour officials were saying. He was just told he had lost, or he was just told by a moron he had lost. To clarify, the time spent by Garcia trying to access the other side of the creek should have delayed the start of the search time clock, and the ball would have still been in play if not for that error, the PGA Tour said. Garcia was informed of these developments after his round, the PGA Tour said, but under the rules of golf, his score does not change despite the clarification. I love it. There is nothing better than when the rules say one thing, but or when the rules are misapplied and everyone knows it and everyone agrees, but then nothing is done about it because, well, we can't fix anything Heaven forbid our rules make sure that the right outcomes happen, because, that's only the point of rules. Oh, this is my thing. This is like the stupid stuff with like Major League Baseball and all this crap we're having with umpires. And even going as far back as the Tigers pitcher like a decade ago or whatever, who lost a perfect game because of an umpire just blatantly failing at the most basic part of his job. Like one of the easiest things he has to do. Cost the guy a perfect game. And changing and awarding the guy the perfect game wouldn't have changed any outcome of the game. Nothing. Can't do that. Anyway, Garcia, a 42-year-old player from Spain, is one of a handful of international players who have been linked to the Saudi Arabian-based LIV Golf Invitational Series, which is being fronted by Greg Norman, a two-time winner of the Open. The first LIV Golf Invitational event is scheduled for June 9th through 11th at the Centurion Club outside London. Garcia, who has won 11 times on the PGA Tour and captured his only major championship victory at the 2017 Masters, which was really cool. I was super excited for Sergio for that. Hasn't confirmed whether he has asked the PGA Tour for a release to compete in the London event. He has made more than $54 million on tour. Garcia declined to talk with reporters after shooting 3 under 67 in the first round Thursday. On Wednesday, Englishman Lee Westwood confirmed to Sky Sports that he has asked the PGA Tour and DP World Tour for releases to compete in London. 6-time major champion Phil Mickelson and Robert Garrigas also have confirmed asking for a release from the PGA Tour. What is the DP World Tour? Not shows I'm a casual golf follower, not a hardcore guy. Okay. I love stupid rules. Let's see here. Alcaraz overpowers Idol Nadal at Madrid Open. Let's see. Mulkey LSU, don't care. Man, there's this biography that someone has done of, or doing about Phil Mickelson. Without Mickelson's not involved, not supporting the biography. It seems like every week they're releasing some slanderous crap about Mickelson. Now this book is claiming that he had $40 million in gambling losses. Just the way Phil Mickelson is treated in the media is just absolutely classless. Let's see here. Let's look at some NFL headlines real quick. Pete Carroll does not see the Seahawks trading for a quarterback. Veteran outside linebacker Kyle Van Noy signs deal with the Chargers. Man, as if the Chargers need anything more on defense. Well, actually, I mean, his versatility, being able to play inside, outside linebacker, that's huge. Let's see. QB Hurts relishing opportunity to lead Eagles. NFL plans diversity event for future coaches, GMs. Well, if it's a diversity event, I hope they invite people of all backgrounds and not just one or two. I'm so tired of this whole diversity thing, because it's not actually about diversity. It's just another. To me, it's just another. Or it's a. This whole diversity push in media and sports and all these things. It's a supremacy movement. That's all it is. It's about power and control. It's not about equality. And like people who have been supporting it and pushing it have basically admitted as much. Philadelphia, I think it was. I'm trying to remember who it was. I believe it was Philadelphia Eagles cornerback Darius Slay, but I cannot confirm that. I know it was an NFL player. Or no. Was it him or was it? It might have been. I want to say. I know it was a former NFL corner or current NFL corner. It might have been Dominique Foxworth of ESPN, but I don't think it was him. I think it was a current player. Anyway, let's just say this instead of attaching a name. A NFL cornerback or a cornerback with NFL experience put out on social media, because I saw this tweet myself like 2 months ago. The only way to get black coaches and black coaches and general manager or front office people is by having black owners. And here's the thing. What he's saying there is the only it's like to me that sounds racist in the opposite. It's like, well, if we want this, we need black owners, and black owners will hire the black people. Which we've got plenty of proof that like that's not the case. I mean, we actually have more. We have a bunch of black GMs and presidents of football operations right now across the NFL, and they're hiring white coaches. The Vikings new general manager, hired a white coach. The Miami Dolphins general manager is black. He fired a black coach and hired a half-black coach. The Browns, black general manager, hired a white coach in 2020. So I don't know. It just, and I hate to be that way, and I hate to talk about race at all in that regards, but that stuff's in the news cycle, so those are the stories. So I mean, I've got to it's like at some point I've got to comment on it. So talk about Embiid. Celtics to list Smart as probable for Game 3. That is a huge lift for them. Los Angeles Clippers and Robert Covington agreed a 2-year, $24 million extension. Rocco keeps getting paid. Good for him. And next year, dude, the Clippers next year are going to be deadly, I think. We'll talk about that here in a second. Draymond fined $25,000 for flipping off Grizzlies fans. Yeah, we talked about that yesterday. Brooks suspended for Game 3. That probably hurts us. Hawks owner vows won't stand pat in offseason. Get ready for the Hawks to make some kind of aggressive and potentially stupid move. I like their GM, but when your owner gets involved, it's usually a bad thing. So let's actually talk about the Clippers real quick, since they're not in the, or they were eliminated during the play-in tournament, and but since they did this, let's just look at their roster right now. So you will have next year, Kawhi Leonard will be back healthy, Paul George back healthy. Well, hopefully on both fronts. Actually, I'd rather look at maybe a depth chart that'll have it laid out a little different. Although it's okay, so they have it listed how they're expecting it to be next year. Your starting lineup, Reggie Jackson maybe 3.0 at this point. At point guard, you got Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Nicholas Batum, and Ivica Zubac, who very underrated center. Isaac Hartenstein is a really good backup center. So, like, that's your center rotation there. Moving up from Hartenstein, they've got it listed this way, and it's interesting. Terrence Mann is the backup point guard. Norm Powell. You got Marcus Morris Sr. and Robert Covington. Now, Morris, Batum, Covington, all of those guys could start. And in some matchups, I could see even Powell starting and you moving like Leonard and George down to both playing the forward spots. They've got Luke Kennard back here, third string. Luke Kennard, with the injuries out, was actually playing really well this year. It wouldn't shock me if they tried to move Marcus Morris this offseason. I'm not saying it will happen, but it could. You've also got Jason Preston, who they like as a young player. Amir Coffey was really good off the bench this year and playing like a bigger role at times because of injuries. I'm looking for another guy that I'm not seeing here. And then you've got Brandon Boston Jr., who they've got down here at fifth string. And behind this Xavier Moon guy. That doesn't make any sense to me. Boston was really freaking good last year, and he'd be ahead of both of those guys. If anything, Brandon Boston seems like he has the ability to be a backup point guard. But they've got a lot of guys who are not like elite playmakers. Like Leonard, obviously, is the leading playmaker for when he's on the court. Jackson can do some of that and take a bigger role with bench units. Same with Paul George. But they're like the secondary guys. Batum's a good passer. Zubac is a good passer on the post. But most of their guys on the bench are more score-first players or, stand, and catch and shoot or catch and dunk type players. Kennard has some pick and roll ability. Coffey showed some pick and roll ability. But it would be interesting to see if they tried to move Morris for like a truer backup point guard or someone for a truer backup point guard. But regardless, when it comes to the playoffs, they have some young guys that could step into like the bench role for that. And they've got three primary shot creators in Leonard, George, and Jackson. So with a lot of role players. Clippers are going to, if they can stay healthy next year, that team has as deep a roster as any roster in the last decade, in my opinion. That is, once again, in my opinion. And we'll see what they do in the offseason. On top of that, check some college football headlines here. Dabo Swinney's brother arrested on sex charge. What? We'll get to that in a second. NC State gets boost as offensive lineman Zavala okayed to return. Zavala? They got Guardians playing football now? That was a Destiny 2 joke. Sources. Ex-Florida QB Emory Jones committing to Arizona State University. Oh, I didn't talk about that yesterday. Let's see here. All right. Brother of Clemson's Dabo Swinney arrested, charged with sexual exploitation of a minor. Hopefully that didn't get my stream flagged by YouTube and deranked. The brother of Clemson football coach Dabo Swinney has been arrested and charged with exploitation of a minor, according to South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson. Henry Ervil Sweeney III, 53, of Clemson, South Carolina, was arrested on April 23rd, the Attorney General release said. Investigators received a tip from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children that led them to Sweeney. Investigators say Sweeney distributed child abuse material. I'm leaving out a word there to not get my stuff deranked. It is a second-degree felony charge that could bring up to 10 years in prison. Sweeney's case will be prosecuted by the Attorney General's office. Dude, Dabo Sweeney, Clemson's head coach since the middle of the 2008 season, has addressed his brother's legal difficulties in the past. Henry Sweeney was arrested in Florida in January 2016 and charged with aggravated stalking. He was sentenced to a $400 fine or 35 hours of community service, according to online court records in Bay City, Florida. Dabo Sweeney said, "Then there are consequences for bad actions. My family's no different than anybody else," he said at the time. Well, how about that? That's interesting. Yeah, hate to see it. All right, former Ducks offensive lineman Doug Brenner settles with Oregon in football workout lawsuit. So I talked about this fairly recently. Former Oregon offensive lineman Doug Brenner has reached a settlement with the university over a lawsuit related to his hospitalization following controversial workouts in 2017, one of Brenner's attorneys told ESPN on Thursday. As part of the settlement, Brenner dismissed claims against former Oregon football coach Willie Taggart, now the head coach at Florida Atlantic, and his former strength coach, Iriel Odorinde. Financial terms were not disclosed. Brenner is still suing the NCAA for $100 million in punitive damages, and closing arguments began on Thursday afternoon, which he's liable to not win that suit just because, even if it's true, it's the NCAA. The law firm of, even if, they could be found guilty, they won't be because they're the NCAA. The law firm of Kafoury and McDougal first filed the suit on behalf of Brenner in January 2019 in circuit court in the state of Oregon. Brenner was asking $20 million in non-economic damages and $5.5 million in economic damages in his claims against Oregon, Taggart, and Odorinde. The trial began April 12th. "I'm extremely sorry for the incident that transpired, but I'm happy that a lot of truths came out during the proceedings," Taggart said in a statement to ESPN. "Now my total focus is on getting back to our FAU football family and our student athletes." Truths. Brenner's legal team is still seeking massive punitive damages from the NCAA, arguing it acted with malice or has shown a reckless and outrageous indifference to a highly unreasonable risk of harm because there isn't a specific rule or bylaw regarding over-exerting players during workouts. Now that is interesting. That is interesting. The NCAA argues that it doesn't have the authority to pass health and safety bylaws. The member schools and conferences are responsible for players' health and safety, which is interesting. Because if, say, the school and the Pac-12 do have rules and regulations. And those were not exceeded. Well, I mean, it seems like he should have been suing the conference or whatever. Odorinde, who later was hired by Taggart at Florida State for the same position, was suspended by Oregon in 2017 for a month without pay after tight end Cam McCormick and offensive lineman Sam Potassi were hospitalized with Brenner and suffered from rheumatoid RHABDOMYOLYSIS. It's hard for me to pronunciate some things that are long because of how close I have to get to them. I'm assuming this is rhabdomyolysis. Rhabdomyolysis? My gosh, I can't say it. Whatever this is, as a result of workouts conducted shortly after Taggart was hired at Oregon. Rhabdomyolysis. I nailed it. There we go. According to the lawsuit, the workout lasted for 60 to 90 minutes, and the staff did not make water available in the workout room for at least the first day of the workouts. What? The lawsuit also states that about 40 players in each group had to do 10 perfect push-ups in unison, and if one of the athletes was out of sync with the rest or failed to use perfect technique, all the players had to do up-downs and start the drill over. So, make them tired and weak and harder for them to do it. I don't know. Brenner, McCormick, and Potassi rejoined the team following their hospitalizations, but the incident prompted Oregon to change its reporting system, with the strength and conditioning coach answering to the Ducks' director of performance and sports science instead of the head coach, which to me says that something was wrong. According to the Oregonian, the university, Taggart, and Odorinde contended during the trial that the workouts were excessive but not intended to be punitive. Well, then what's the point of making people do up-downs for failing at something if it's not punitive? That's literally punitive. What? Odorinde apologized during his testimony last week, according to the Oregonian. Now, I'm not always for saying apologizing, and they're not putting that apology in context, what he apologized for. But my thing is, in this situation, I feel like apologizing for anything is, or probably is, admission of overdoing it. Let's see if this is it. You never want kids to be injured in any ways, especially from a workout or even at practice, Odorinde said on Thursday, according to the Oregonian. But at the same time, you want to push kids and you want to push them safely. I feel like with today's outcome, I believe Doug understands our intent was never for that. It was to build young men and to build a team. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying you weren't trying to build young men, but I don't think you were trying to build young men. I think you were trying to build athletes. And there is a difference there. Oregon, in the statement Thursday, said the trial testimony showed that no one at the University of Oregon intended to harm any student, and that our response and care for our students after the accident was the best we could provide, which we believe enabled the students to make a full recovery. At this point, terms of the settlement agreement are confidential as they are being finalized. You know what? Here's my thing. If the player gets what he wants or is getting something out of this, we don't need to know. We don't need to know what the settlement is. We don't need to know what the agreement is. I've looked into this situation, and this is my thing. I get the idea of you're pushing people and stuff like that. But if any of the claims in the lawsuit or in this lawsuit are true, and about some of the stuff that was going on, like if there was no water provided in the workout room during the first day of workouts, and maybe that was a one-day oversight, like an accident, if it was intentional, that's bad and shouldn't have happened. Luckily, no one died, or apparently, well, other than Brenner, the other guys apparently, from what I understand, they haven't filed any lawsuits. Brenner has. Maybe Brenner's being a crybaby. Maybe Brenner is trying, to just get something out, or, use the legal system to benefit himself nefariously. Maybe so. I don't know, because one thing that was mentioned in there was that I read in the first art, or the previous article I'd read, claims that Odorende was not properly certified to be doing what he was doing anyway. Now that, to me, is an oversight by the university, and regardless of no one trying to do harm, I'm pretty sure that's a breach of some kind of laws or rules. And I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. From what digging I've done. So that lawsuit has been settled. We'll see about the NCAA one. That just seems like an opportunistic lawsuit to some degree. It's like, well, there's no rule on the books by the NCAA. Well, that's up to the conferences and the schools. Well, unfortunately, he just settled with the school, which you might lean that needed in whatever direction. But if the settlement basically states that the school did nothing wrong, and the court finds that, yeah, the NCAA can pawn this stuff off down the line, well, he's got no leg to stand on for that lawsuit. Anyway, I guess at that right now, since I've got nothing really else to talk about today, other than we've got game 3s of Heat Sixers and Celtics Bucks tonight, I guess I'll call the show there. I'm predicting Miami to go up 3-0. I have no idea how that Celtics Bucks game is going to play out. So we'll see. But I'll tell you this: if the Heat win tonight, Heat Sixers series is over. Like, the Heat have won the series. We'll just figure out which game they win it from there. With that being said, I'm signing off. I'll catch you guys